And greetings. Happy Thursday. Back here inside the comfy confines of our home office here in Des Moines. I am Steve Deace. After an incredible experience the last couple of days down in Dallas for the red carpet premiere of Nefarious, alongside Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre. First and foremost, I want to say I got word last night from our distribution team with the movie. I mean, what you guys are doing is amazing. So we put out the call earlier this week. In particular, we were struggling to get theaters in the Carolinas. And this was an opportunity to kind of show the theater chains in that part of the country, hey, you know, there is definitely some demand for this movie, and you want to consider it. Guys, we found out last night we added almost 30 theaters in North and South Carolina. I mean, that's just all the credit goes to y'all. I mean, you guys all made that happen. So thank you very much. I mean, the pre-sale numbers are very strong, I am told, particularly in comparison with the competition that is opening up that weekend. So the pre-sale tickets are on sale now. Between now and Monday, every theater chain is going to go on the record about how many screens that they are going to put us in. So the battle is ongoing. We actually have some momentum right now, though, because they are responding to your response to this film. So NefariousTickets.com is where you can go to have your voice heard. And it is being heard right now. They are paying attention. You are making a mark. So thank you very much. NefariousTickets.com. Again, NefariousTickets.com. All right, coming up on today's show, we mentioned last week, my daughter is now taking over 3 non-political questions, so Anastasia will join us a little bit later on. We will conclude our study, and probably for the final time, simply because it's not really a study anymore, going through a nefarious plot. It is essentially just the backstory of the daily headlines now. And so we have come to the conclusion of that book, and we will conclude the study of a nefarious plot. Timing is perfect. It concludes right up on the week, up till the week of the release of the movie it inspired. So we will get to that as well. At the bottom of this hour, Robert Barnes is going to join us. He's an attorney that's done a lot of good work. I know he's a name a lot of you know. It's because he's done a lot of good work in the last few years, particularly where it comes to COVID. And he is representing someone that we interviewed for Rise of the Fourth Reich, Brooke Jackson, and her case of fraud against Pfizer. He thinks that I am not telling the full truth about Ron DeSantis' COVID record. And so we absolutely invited him on. The last thing I want to do is tell you guys something that's not accurate. And so we will give him a chance to offer a rebuttal that is coming up here at the bottom of the hour. So you don't want to miss that. Before we get to all of that, however, this came to me this morning, and I want to make sure that I am holding myself to the standard I'm holding everybody else to. And one of the things we've talked a lot about on this show recently is really America's cold Civil War, culture war, is a battle of conviction. That we are not a nation of laws, and we never have been. We're a nation of political will, and we always will be. And right now, unfortunately anyway, it appears that conviction tends to be on one side, and that side is not ours. And I get notes from a lot of you. I mean, I was just cleaning out my inbox. Thank you to John Munoz and our tech team. We got rid of the 71,000 emails when we migrated email servers this week. So we got rid of those. Now I'm down to less than 1,000. It's just going to take me some time to get through all of those. So if you've not heard back from me yet, give me a little grace where that is concerned. I'm making my way down that list. But even going through them again this morning, hearing more from people who, hey, you guys inspired me. I'm running for school board. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. And those are the best emails, other than the ones where people will say, hey, you guys inspired me on a spiritual level. Those are the best ones of them all. But, you know, we've taken a lot of risks on this show, but I want to make sure that we are doing and practicing what we preach. So here is my vow to you today. Rise of the Fourth Reich is a certified national bestseller. We have sold nearly 30,000 copies of that book, hardcover. I have not received yet a dime of royalties from that book. As it stands now, after we give the split to the publisher, then I split with my co-author, Daniel Horowitz. It looks like my proceeds of those royalties as of now will be in the tens of thousands of dollars. You guys know, I am not rich. I'm not poor, but I'm not rich. That would be a nice chunk of change for me and my family. Nevertheless, there are things far more important than money. Last week, Rasmussen, one of the most accurate pollsters of the last several years, revealed a poll that found 11% of Americans believe someone in their household died as a result of COVID-19. 10% of Americans believe someone in their household died because of side effects from the COVID vaccine, vis-a-vis Operation Warp Speed. To put that number in comparison, or into context, I should say, to put that number into context, in the last updated census, there were 131 million households in America. 131 million. Let's say they are exaggerating that, because that would be what? 13 million deaths? Let's say they're exaggerating that by 50%. That would be 6.5 million deaths. Let's say they're exaggerating it by 75, 80% when they respond in that survey. We're still in the millions of deaths from this jab, this poisonous poke, this toxic jab. So here is my vow. If the author of Operation Warp Speed, former President Donald Trump, will come forward and admit that Operation Warp Speed was a colossal failure, it was not what he was promised, it was not what he signed on to, and as a result, he will vow, if given back the office of the presidency, to revoke liability protections for the manufacturers Pfizer and Moderna. If he will vow to those two things by the end of this month, when I am due to receive my first royalty check, because I just can't simply afford to have tens of thousands of dollars just sitting in an account, not spent and put to work for my family. I can't afford that. So before those royalties start coming in here at the end of this month, today is April 6th, before April 30th, if Donald Trump will admit the calamity, the crime against humanity that Operation Warp Speed has turned out to be, we're just talking, by the way, the direct deaths. We're not even getting into all of the other side effects. We're not even getting into what it will do and has already done to fertility. We're not getting into the long-term effects and wear and tear on the heart and what that does to shorten lifespans on the back end. We're just talking people that have died just since the launch of the jabs in 2021. If the former president who signed all those checks and gave all that money to Pfizer and Moderna and then gave them double liability protection, more than even what they had since 1986, if he will come forward and admit that this has been a colossal mistake, it is not what he thought it was, and therefore he will vow to remove liability protection for Pfizer and Moderna as manufacturers if he were to be given the honor of being president of the United States again. If he will do that by the end of this month, I will take all of my royalties, tens of thousands of dollars, and use them all to buy Trump campaign mugshot fundraiser t-shirts. Every last dime. Every last time. That won't, by the way, be a tax-deductible gift. I'm still going to pay taxes on all of that income. I'm just never going to actually receive it. I'll give it all to the billionaire selling you T-shirts with his mugshot on it. All I ask in return, I will be taxed on tens of thousands of dollars of income that I will never see, my family won't have. All I ask in return is that he admit the truth of Operation Warp Speed and vow as president he will remove the liability protections that he gave to Pfizer and Moderna therein. That's it. And there are 24 days to receive that admission, and I will gladly give away all of that money. I won't take a nickel of royalties for the book. Ball is in your court, Mr. President. And now here's Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away brought to you by He's Running. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is officially running for president of the United States, providing Joe Biden with a primary challenger in addition to Marianne Williamson, should Biden decide to run for a second term. Almost instantaneously, legacy media outlets around the country started dismissing RFK Jr. as a crazy anti-vaxxer, but it is a curious development given RFK Jr. is, by today's standards, an anti-establishmentarian, something to keep an eye on. Congressman Thomas Massie has endorsed Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for president, saying in a statement that DeSantis has surrounded himself with capable people who share his principles and has never backed down from a fight. There's now a little bit of video of Dr. Anthony Fauci's deposition in the social media censorship lawsuit brought about by attorneys general in Missouri and Louisiana. In this video of the deposition, Fauci is discussing his thoughts regarding the Great Barrington Declaration, which was signed by oodles of doctors and epidemiologists, and it sought to inject some sanity into COVID policy. Fauci, of course, back then was having none of it. This video is courtesy of Texas Lindsay on Twitter.
This is an NBC News article dated October 15th, 2020.
Correct.
And the headline says, Dr. Fauci says letting the coronavirus spread to achieve herd immunity is, quote, nonsense and, quote, dangerous. Correct?
That is correct.
Turn to the third page of the document. You describe the view of letting everybody get infected and then we'll have herd immunity. And you say, quite frankly, that is nonsense. And anybody who knows anything about epidemiology will tell you that that is nonsense and very dangerous. Correct?
That is correct.
Do you still believe that?
Do I believe that the Barrington Declaration premise of letting the virus rip through society and infect people, leading to their illness, hospitalization, and death is nonsense and dangerous? I still do.
Are you an epidemiologist?
I'm an infectious disease person with some pretty good experience in epidemiology.
Pharma giant Johnson & Johnson said this week it's planning to pay almost $9 billion over the next 25 years to settle allegations that the company's baby powder and other talc products cause cancer. Nothing to see here. At the White House, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre just can't say whether the targeted murder of 6 Christians in Nashville last week is a so-called hate crime.
Former Vice President Pence said that if the shooter who killed 6 people in that Christian school in Tennessee was motivated by a hatred towards Christians, that the crime should be categorized as a hate crime. I'm wondering what the president thinks of that kind of designation.
It's not for us to decide.
GOP lawmakers in Tennessee are moving to remove 3 Democrat members of the state legislature for their role in the violent anti-gun insurrection at the Tennessee State House last week. House members are expected to vote today to remove Representatives Gloria Johnson, Justine Jones, and Justin Pearson from their offices. Learning Chinese today. Today's phrase is yes, yes, 1,000 times yes.
是的，是的，1000次是的。
In North Carolina, this woman is Tricia Cotham. She's a state representative, and she just defected from the Democrat Party to give the North Carolina GOP a supermajority in the state House of Representatives.
Modern-day Democratic Party has become unrecognizable to me and to so many others throughout this state and this country. The party wants to villainize anyone who has free thought, free judgment, has solutions, who wants to get to work to better our state.
Defeated Wisconsin Supreme Court candidate Danielle Kelly had some strong words about the race during his concession speech the other night.
I wish that in a circumstance like this, I would be able to concede to a worthy opponent. But I do not have a worthy opponent to which I can concede. This was the most deeply deceitful, dishonorable, despicable campaign I have ever seen run for the courts. It was truly beneath contempt.
And finally, this from the Babylon Bee. Sick of same old crime and violence, Chicago tries electing a Democrat this time. And that's what happened while we were away.
It is beyond hilarious that Chicago just went ahead and reelected someone less masculine than Lori Lightfoot. That's
tough but fair.
They just reelected a less masculine version of Lori Lightfoot as mayor. I just find that absolutely hilarious. By the way, I got a text from a buddy of mine who says, you know what, I'll match up to $10,000. I'll match your vow to Trump. If he does it by April 30th, I'll donate 10 grand myself to that end.
This just sounds like some quality art of the deal to me, Steve.
It just seems so. Again, if we're going to have I was texting with my new buddy, Pedro Gonzalez last night about the hero cult factor. And he's like, listen, man, if he was Octavian, I'll join your hero cult. I'm like, I agree. Okay, I'm in. I'll join your hero cult.
Just a bit outside.
But no, I'm not going to join the Ringling Brothers cult. Okay, the Carney cult. Not joining that. All right. I want a real hero cult. All right. I'm totally in for like real loyalty pledges. Like, I actually want to make this a loyalty test to Donald Trump for reals. Like, for reals. That's what I'm asking. Let's get nuts. Like, I'm asking, let's go full Franco, American version. I want a real loyalty test. Every Republican governor, every legislature, every Republican sheriff, will you put them all in? I want to know. Wouldn't you like to know? Wouldn't you like to know which of the people you voted for would be willing to hand you over to them if they came up with some cockamamie charges against you? I'd like to know. Let's do this for reals. All right. Not to sell T-shirts and raise money from boomer grandmothers who love Donald Trump more than their own grandkids who are getting castrated by the spirit of the age while they're scrounging up the last $50 each month they can find to send off his way. OK, let's do a real hero cult, a real one. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. So there you go. There's a buddy of mine saying, hey, I'll match that for 10 grand. Cool. Aaron's montage. Brought to you by our friends over at Moink. 60% of U.S. pork production comes from a company that has Chinese ownership because America comes from Chinese ownership. That's just pretty much true. That's why there's no point in going to war against China. You're just fighting over what language the social credit score will be in. But you do have some options to exempt yourself, like our friends over at Moink. Grass-fed, grass-finished beef and lamb, pastured pork and chicken, sustainable, wild-caught Alaskan salmon, straight to your door. Because Moink farms and fishes like your grandparents did. Farm to table, rod to table. All right, you can taste the Moink difference in every time you taste it. All right, and if you want to try some of the best bacon out there, they'll give you free bacon in your first box for a limited time. Free bacon in your first box when you go to moinkbox.com/Steve. MOINK. MOINK for moinkbox.com/Steve. Free bacon in your first box at moinkbox.com/Steve. All right, coming up in the overtime today, I have absolutely no sympathy for women that are getting their skulls broken by male MMA fighters. I just don't. If you need, you're consenting, you're volunteering to take part in this complete charade. It's awful. It's terrible to look at. I don't like watching women fight anyway. Saw enough violence against women in my house growing up, so I'm not into it for fun as an adult, as a rule, nevertheless. But I just don't. You knew what you were signing up for. I mean, that's a reaping what you're sowing, man. So am I a bad dad of daughters? Am I terrible? We'll discuss today in the overtime for Blaze TV subscribers at blazetv.com/Deace, DEACE. That's where you'll be able to watch it later today. If you are a subscriber to Blaze TV, we'll record it right after today's show, upload it for you there, and you'll watch it later today at blazetv.com/Deace, which is also where you can go to become a Blaze TV subscriber for just $10 a month at blazetv.com/Deace. There's really one thing that I want to discuss in Aaron's montage, and that is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, according to the Associated Press, he seems poised to challenge Joe Biden for the Democrat nomination for president. And I had a chance to meet him in January. We both went down to Nashville to be a part of our colleague Jason Whitlock's special on the poison poke. I spent a good deal of time with him during that day, discussed things and matters with him at length, both on and off the air, including the assassinations of his father and his uncle. And just an incredible level of courage, of conviction there. He has lost, he's basically lost his birthright. He's been excommunicated from the family, by and large. He has been detached from his family's considerable generational personal wealth. He has been labeled an outcast by his own political party, who, of course, 70 years later is still making bank and monetizing his family name. And he's done it all over his own courage of conviction, his belief in the dangers of the biomedical fascist state. And a few years ago, I didn't know anything about this, wouldn't have even paid attention to it. I was fighting 75 other enemies until this one came knocking and darkened each of our doors. And there's been a lot of talk of Jonathan, all right, and all this other stuff. Tell me who in America has more motivation to shatter what's the triumvirate that gave us COVID? Well, the DOD, who helped fund the creation of the virus and experimented on all their soldiers with its poisonous poke. So you have DOD, CIA, FDA, CDC. That's really, I guess, a quadrangle more than a triumvirate, the four-letter organizations there. Tell me who will be running for president in this cycle who has more of a personal motivation to truly punch those organizations right in the throat. Who would it be? I have no idea. I mean, I don't even think that's even a debatable point, actually. What would be more limited government than taking the four largest, most dangerous, weaponized, other than the DOJ, that would be your top five. You'd put those four and the DOJ. Those are your five. Who would be, what would be more limited government than shattering four of the five most weaponized agencies in government into 1,000 pieces? What would be more limited government than that? Let's talk pro-life. Now, if I had to guess, I met the guy in an afternoon. We talked about a lot of things, never got in the abortion issue. If I had to guess, last name's Kennedy, Democrat, probably going to be some form of pro-abortion, would be my guess. On the other hand, there are more pro-life issues than just abortion. Like 10% of Americans believe someone in their household died in the last 2 years because of side effects to a poisonous poke. And there's 131 million households in America. So that's a lot of people dead that didn't have to be dead.
And is this jab making us sterile and infertile? That's pretty anti-life.
That's pretty anti-life here, for sure. So I think that is something to contemplate. Absolutely. So here's where I'm at with him. And I'm not discussed this with you guys at all. I'll just tell you what I already put on Twitter last night when I heard this news. As long as he doesn't embrace the tranny madness, I'm listening. Okay? I am listening. We are in an era, and I say this as someone that already gets accused of being a Ron DeSantis fanboy and everything else. I'm listening. We are in an era where we don't need fewer options right now. We need more. All right? So the tranny madness thing to me is a absolute no-go. It's demonic insanity on its face. So as long as he doesn't embrace that, I'm going to listen to quite a bit. And even if him and I disagree on climate alarmism and all this other crap, what do Republicans ever do about any of these other issues? Do you know, what do they do? What do they do about any of them? Anybody get punished for any of it?
No.
No. In fact, lots of Republicans put up carbon credit schemes and everything else. All right. So I think on the things, see, this is me being, again, consistent. It's funny. Which you guys love when it's in your direction, not so much when it's not. I mean, I'm the one not changing. Some of you, a not insignificant amount of people that are listening to me right now, on behalf of Cheeto Jesus, just want me to forget the whole thing of the last couple of years. I love you too much to do that. I'm not going to. I'm not going to forget it. That's why I'm already volunteering to absorb tens of thousands of dollars in next year's tax return of non-received income that I donated to the billionaire t-shirt sale instead. If we can get some movement on, can we stop killing our friggin' people, please? Can that stop? So, I mean, if I really believe that the last few years is the greatest threat to our way of life that we have faced in my lifetime, and I promise you, I do believe it. Tell me who would be more equipped or willing probably in this potential field in either side to truly punch that in the throat. So I'm going to listen. You bet I'm going to listen. And I'm probably going to get disappointed because it's 2023 and we're watching the end of a civilization here. Okay, so I suspect, my guess is 6 weeks from now, RFK Jr. dresses in drag. I mean, that's probably how this goes down. Isn't that how pretty much all these stories end? Okay, at any moment we say, well, that's different. Maybe we should have some hope in that. Never works.
The new Nike motto is just dude it.
Yes. Yeah. So I have, I don't, I've met RFK Jr. for one day, don't know him personally other than the one day I spent with him, respect him from afar. Would I be stunned if, in the middle of this, he ends up, doing Dude Looks Like a Lady, commercials with the guy who's punching all these trans women in the MMA circle? No, I wouldn't. I mean, I'm in an era right now where I'm trying to get the guy who overturned Roe v. Wade to admit his shots killing people. Okay, so no, I'm not. I don't think anything's off the table. I would not anticipate being disappointed by anything or anybody in this particular era. What I am saying though is he's going to have to disappoint me. He has earned some level of benefit of the doubt from me. He is going to have to disappoint me. What are your thoughts, gentlemen?
If nothing else, pay very close attention to what his own party and the media do to him. Mm-hmm. Already, the one good one at CNN, Jake Tapper, flat out called him an anti-vaccine quack. They are worried about him. That alone should make you pay attention.
The fact that they would even acknowledge that he's running for president and then go to the lengths that you just said, Todd, I think that kind of proves on some level, at the very least, what you're just saying, that, yeah, here is somebody from our own petri dish here who has the gumption to just call BS on one of the biggest shibboleths, if not the biggest shibboleth, certainly of the last 3 to 4 years, one of the biggest shibboleths of 21st century America. Yeah, that would give me cause for concern if I were one of them as well.
All right, we'll come back. Robert Barnes will join us to correct me on a few things. Stay tuned for that right here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. All right, back here on the Steve Deace Show, this part of the program brought to you by our friends over at Pure Health Research. You must start taking care of your liver now more than ever because the latest data shows that adults with fatty liver were 3.5 times more likely to have heart failure than those without. And maybe up to 100 million Americans right now suffer from fatty liver. So we throw everything at our livers, from cholesterol to alcohol, toxins, statins, cigarettes. That's why so many of us have sluggish fatty livers that make us gain weight and lose energy. For decades now, your liver helped you with over 500 key functions every day. So it's time now for us to help our livers. There is a solution. It's the Liver Health Formula, the all-natural supplement, which contains 12 clinically proven botanicals that help recharge and protect your liver. Manufactured right here in the U.S., sponsored by and approved by American doctors. You can try the Liver Health Formula and receive a free bottle of nano-powered omega-3 to keep your heart healthy. That's try the Liver Health Formula by going to getliverhelp.com/Steve. Head over to getliverhelp.com/Steve and claim your free bonus gift as well at getliverhelp.com/Steve. Let's welcome in attorney Robert Barnes to the program. Way overdue. Should have done this long before today for the very first time. Has done a lot of good work over the last few years, particularly on the case of COVID with Brooke Jackson. I believe you're her attorney, Robert, correct?
Yes.
And what's the latest with her case now, by the way? She is featured in Rise of the Fourth Reich. Her story, her testimony is incredible. Before we get into the other issues, real quick, what's the latest with her case against Pfizer and fraud?
So the federal judge has dismissed the case on grounds that as long as the FDA is still in the game, then nobody can sue Pfizer or anyone else. And so her whistleblower retaliation claim, he's allowing an amendment of. We will be challenging that. We procedurally challenge it with the district court, point out where he was wrong, give him one more chance to get it right. If he does not, then we go up to the Court of Appeals, to the Fifth Circuit. I believe this case will go up to the Supreme Court of the United States, because if this kind of fraud cannot be brought in federal courts, then what fraud case can be brought in federal courts? Mm-hmm. So it's a problem that you talk about in the book, The Fourth Reich, that you've talked about recently. Way too many laws on the books that continue to immunize so-called emergencies, so-called vaccines in a wide range of contexts, whether it's the PrEP Act, whether it's the Childhood Immunizations Law, whether it's laws that are being passed by states that immunize people for basically doing wrong. And we shouldn't be having these immunity laws on the books, period. I don't think any immunity law should exist. Let juries decide what's right and what's wrong, not politicians.
Is the judge's argument essentially, as long as the government is okay with being defrauded, it's not fraud, and a private citizen has no standing to step in on behalf of the government and claim fraud? Is that essentially what he is saying?
Partially, because the Ketam law is all about giving private citizens the right to bring suit, because it's all about how during the Civil War, all these illegal defense contractors were in cahoots with various bureaucrats, ripping off soldiers, giving them bad food, bad shoes, bad equipment, bad armor, bad ammunition, bad blankets, bad everything, lining their own pockets with it. And the Congress said, well, we can't let that happen again, so we're going to give ordinary people the right to bring a whistleblower claim called False Claims Act or Ketam law under the law. Mm-hmm. And so the court couldn't go that far. Instead, the court's position was, well, the FDA says it's okay, and I'm going to just defer to the FDA. As long as the FDA doesn't change their mind, then I'm not going to allow a jury to hear the evidence in the case. I'm not going to allow Brooke Jackson to discover evidence in the case. And so I think that's a mistake by the judge. Now, there's some law out there that some interpretation of the False Claims Act that tries to restrict it. Basically, the practical issue is this. When the government doesn't join a False Claims Act, federal judges dismiss 97% of the time. They're too scared to go up against the federal government. And here, you have a judge who's frankly just scared to go up against Pfizer and the federal government at the same time.
Nice scam they have. So we don't get to vote on who runs these agencies, the bureaucratic state, who runs them and is setting most of the policy today in agencies like FDA and CDC. No one voted for the FDA director. No one voted for the CDC director. So we have no direct electoral accountability to whom is making these policies in the bureaucratic state. And then if you try to claim legal accountability, they just say, well, the government's told that you didn't vote for. The government agency you didn't vote for is totally fine with the fraud, so you can't have standing. It's almost like this is a protection racket.
Completely. And that's where we need major legislative reform. And the states can do it on their own accord. States have their own version of False Claims Act. They can start being the laboratories of democracy, start passing these laws across the country to change this. But it's going to ultimately needs to be congressional change as well. We need to make it clear that any American citizen can sue for things like false claims, that any American can sue. I mean, as one newspaper put it in one article describing the Brooke Jackson case, their take on it is they said the judge appears to be saying it's okay to defraud the American people as long as you just didn't defraud the FDA. Well, I mean, here the great injury of this product is the American people. Right. Now, we are looking at bringing suit on behalf of the American people on a theory of third-party beneficiary. The idea is the DOD contract required Pfizer to deliver a safe, effective vaccine for the prevention of COVID-19. That exact language is in the contract more than 6 times. That's the deliverable being required under the Defense Department contract. The deliverable, who was it really for the benefit of? Not really the Defense Department. It was for the benefit of the American people. And not just American soldiers, but all the American people, because 99% of these vaccines were going out to the American people, so-called vaccines. Well, what did Pfizer deliver? They delivered something that was dangerous, ineffective, wasn't even a vaccine, and never prevented the transmission of COVID-19. And by the way, the contract itself distinguished. They said it wasn't asking for a therapeutic that might reduce the risk of injury from a illness. It was wanting a vaccine that would prevent transmission, period. Well, my view is, under contract law, if you and I, Steve, do a contract to benefit third parties, like let's say, your movie's out, and we decide we're going to do something for the benefit of ticket holders that go to the movie, and one of us breaches that in ways that doesn't injure either one of us, but injures that ticket holder. Well, that ticket holder can sue because they're called a third-party beneficiary. Well, I want to bring suit on behalf of everyone who's injured, and we're talking with other lawyers to bring this suit together. And there's some other folks that are willing to help make it a possibility, pay for all the costs and everything. And if we can put that together, the goal is the American people were the intended third-party beneficiary of this contract. There has been more injury from this drug. Like I said, Pfizer makes El Chapo look like a street corner drug dealer. I mean, this is the scale, the scope, the severity of the injuries that this drug has caused, not just in terms of human lives, not just in terms of the future of an individual in disability, but also economic injury across the world. I mean, Edward Dowd estimates hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars already, and even more down the road, just in disability payments that have to go out, and the lack of productivity in employment. Maybe that's why the unemployment rate is low, but the labor force participation rate is still really low, that there's this gap that they can't explain. Maybe that's why there's all these jobs openings, is there's people that have been disabled by this so-called vaccine. So we are looking at, Brooke Jackson's made clear, she ain't going nowhere. We're not going anywhere. We are going to find a way to keep suing, keep knocking on doors, keep raising the issues before Congress, before legislators, before the court of public opinion, until somebody somewhere, someplace gives some remedy and holds these corrupt actors to account.
Amen. Well, I'm 100% supportive of that. You know that. You and Viva had me on you guys' podcast last fall. You guys could not have been more gracious hosts. So I certainly want to return the favor in the time I have. I've got about 9 minutes. Okay. So you took issue with a tweet that I put out a couple of weeks ago. I want to reset that tweet and let you retort point by point about which you think maybe is out of context or factually inaccurate on my part. That Fauci that DeSantis defied Fauci's recommendations. I mean, there are. Google search DeSantis and Fauci. You could get months and years of complaints and criticisms going back and forth between those two, and replaced his Fauci or medical director with an American frontline doctor. He put in that post, Joe Ladapo. Is that not factually accurate, Robert?
Not exactly. So what happened is DeSantis had his own version of Fauci, and and they had an interchange agreement under a university deal in the state of Florida for his employment. When he kept that guy on, in fact, that guy, he extended him to the maximum possible time, even in 2021, after all this, after he'd been a disaster, because as you know, that health director in Florida was mimicking and imitating Fauci. And when he left, he only left because he could no longer keep him, and he lavished praise on him. And so that's where I took it. I was like, I'm not convinced DeSantis would have done anything different back in 2020 as to Fauci, who, this is another problem with our federal laws. Trump couldn't fire Fauci. That's insane. But that's another story. So my issue there is DeSantis didn't take as much action as many of his supporters believe. I'll give another illustration here. I understand everybody wanting to hold Trump to account. I got no disagreement with that whatsoever. And that Trump needs to reverse positions on the vaccine and pharmaceutical immunity. Needs to go back to his original promise to put Robert Kennedy in charge of a committee to investigate vaccines in this country. Robert Kennedy's now running for president. Presumably the Democratic Party will screw him just like they screwed Tulsi Gabbard, just like they screwed Bernie Sanders, just like they, much worse what happened to his father and his uncle. So go out now. If Trump is smart, he goes out now, reverses course on the vaccine, and says he's going to put Robert Kennedy in charge of a vaccine review about all vaccines, so we get to the bottom of it. But take DeSantis. Here's one of my annoyances with DeSantis. Right now, we were talking about these ridiculous immunity laws. Well, guess who's got a ridiculous immunity law? The state of Florida. DeSantis keeps passing this law that goes through the Florida legislature that says if anybody in the medical field whatsoever, hospital, nursing home, you name it, if they went along with the government advice, including Fauci's advice, then they're immune from suit. So I couldn't even sue under vaccine law in the state of Florida, under Florida law, independent of the federal law problems. This is where it's time for DeSantis to step up to the rhetoric. If DeSantis wants to say, look, I would have been a lot better on these issues, okay, prove it now. Prove it now. Go in and make that Florida grand jury do something. That Florida grand jury should be talking to Brooke Jackson. Pfizer clearly committed crimes against the people of the state of Florida. Don't just form the grand jury, make sure it does something. When Democrats form a grand jury, it always does something. Why is it Republican grand juries never do nothing? And then second, get rid of this immunity law. If people followed Fauci's advice, that should not be grounds for immunity. That should be grounds for liability.
Okay. Next, DeSantis reversed course when he saw the poison poke data, and to this day still has the only health department in the country telling any amount of truth about it. Is there another health department in America that has been honest about any of the actual dangers of the vaccines, recommended against giving them to any portion of the population before Florida's did?
I agree entirely. His Surgeon General was a fantastic pick. Put him in place or appointed him in September of 2021, then put in power February 2022. And that DeSantis has, on that side of the aisle, has been very good.
Okay. DeSantis began reopening his state May 1. April 22nd is when Donald Trump of 2020 is when Donald Trump criticized Brian Kemp for reopening Georgia and said it was too dangerous. On April 5th, Donald Trump forwarded a tweet from his still FDA commissioner, Scott Gottlieb, criticizing Florida for not shutting down the beaches. So on April 22nd is when Trump criticized Brian Kemp. April 29th is when Ron DeSantis and three other governors, Greg Abbott in Texas, Kim Reynolds in Iowa, and I can't remember the other one, all announced they were going to reopen their states as of May 1, which is shortly after Trump was still criticizing Georgia for reopening too soon. Is that not factually accurate?
Not exactly. So Trump also in April 21st, 22nd, also said he wanted the states to start reopening. It was the scale and speed of reopening. And DeSantis went along with Fauci's reopening plan loosely, that, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4, whereas other states completely reopened or never shut down at all. So that's where DeSantis, during most of the time period of 2020, basically tended to parrot and parallel Trump rather than disagree with Trump. That's why I don't think Trump ever criticized DeSantis at all for not doing more related to COVID. It typically that they were, and then of course when Trump was out, DeSantis pushed the vaccine like mad early on, was promoting it. He had this old guy come on, this old veteran, said, look, I'm giving it to the old veteran. That guy died, by the way, within like a month. And so DeSantis mostly picked up on the real problems in 2022 on the vaccines. And then on the issue of COVID, he mostly paralleled Trump rather than disagreed with Trump during most of 2020.
I want to get to the bottom line here because we're going to be short on time, okay? And I had this theory going in. I just didn't want to air it before I heard what you had to say. And frankly, what you've had to say has confirmed my theory. There is a margin for error here in that DeSantis was still in office post-2020, and Donald Trump was not. And it is true, most of DeSantis' more aggressive pushbacks against this came in 2021. My position as a ardent Trump critic on this, Robert, is not so much all the mistakes he made in 2020, because all he did was make mistakes, but everyone pretty much we know now made all the same mistakes. It is the refusal now sitting here in 2023 to come forward and admit that he made those mistakes. I mean, he couldn't still govern and change his direction the way a Ron DeSantis could, but he can certainly change his rhetoric on these things. And frankly, he hasn't. He still, if you push him on lockdowns, well, our lockdowns save lives. He hasn't come forward. You said yourself earlier in the segment that he still won't come forward and be honest about what's gone on here with this jab that you're trying to adjudicate in court as we speak. For me, it is not so much the mistakes that he made in 2020. It is the it is the lack of remorse or realization of them as we sit here now in 2023. I've got about a minute and a half. I'll give you the last word on that.
Yeah, so, I mean, partially to Trump's credit, he did, like during the debates in 2020, say we could never lock down, we can't lock down again. That's as close as someone like Trump gets to recognizing mistakes. So he's been getting better. Both the virtue and vice with Trump is his stubbornness. So sometimes that's a vice when he won't recognize he made a mistake. You'll often get implicit recognition of it by him saying things like on the vaccine. Some people say it hurt people. Some people say it benefited people. He's slowly getting away from his original position of assuming it was just going to be great. There's plenty of opportunity for Trump to exit ramp on all these things by saying Pfizer lied, people died, hold him responsible. We shouldn't have immunity for big drug companies in America. Pfizer deliberately delayed the delivery of the product until after the election just to hurt him. So he owes them nothing but payback. So I agree that it's a weakness with Trump, but it's also sometimes a virtue, because sometimes you need a stubborn SOB who won't listen to the establishment, who won't listen to them on other issues. So sometimes it hurts, but sometimes it helps. And in the wash, I'll take Trump more often than I won't, because more often than not, that stubbornness works to our benefit. This is just not an illustration of it, but there's still hope. And I'm a Baptist. I believe in deathbed conversions. So I'm hopeful that Trump will step forward and make the right choice and say these people lied and they need to be held responsible. And we need to change the law. And I hope DeSantis does the same thing in Florida. Change the law, hold those people accountable who did remdesivir and other things that killed so many people in Florida.
On that, we completely agree. If we're going to form a grand jury, I want to see proverbial heads swinging from trees. On that, we agree. All right, brother, got to go. We'll have you back, I promise.
Absolutely.
All right, take care. God bless. All right, we'll come back. Theology Thursday is next. Stay tuned. Greetings. We are back with Hour 2 live and on demand on BlazeTV radio and podcast. Steve Deace here with Aaron McIntyre, who is sick again. But all of us who have raised little children know what that is like. You are never, ever over sniffles and sore throats. You're like SEC teams with NCAA probation, man. You're just in between. You're never off probation. You're just in between. You remember those days, Erzin? It's just, weeks off. You get a few weeks off, and then the sniffles and sore throats. Even when they're not sick, they're absorbing all those germs and passing them on to you because you just can't stop cuddling with them because they're just so dang adorable. Okay? So Aaron is here fighting through the icks. Todd is here with me as well. You are here too, and you can let us know what you think about what we think via the SteveDeace.com inbox. Steve at SteveDeace.com. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok, and you can find me over on Truth Social at Real Steve Deace as well. It is safe to email me again. All right, we have gone. Thank you to John Munoz and our tech team here at The Blaze who figured out how mine was the only email account that ended up with 70-some-odd thousand emails in its inbox when we migrated to our new servers. I know the answer. I see you working. I see Nefarious working. I mean, I know why. I mean, at this point, I just kind of chuckle. At this point, as long as it's not killing me or somebody I care about, I'm pretty much just chuckling at what he's doing to us at this point. But we got it fixed. Now it's less than 1,000. So eventually I will get to yours. All right. Just be patient with me when you email the show, steve@stevedeace.com. All right. Also, if you're a podcast listener, if you've yet to do this, leave us a 5-star review. Thank you to all of you who have, and hit subscribe or follow on your podcast platform of choice. Thank you to all of you who have done that as well. Theology Thursday, brought to you by My Patriot Supply. It is hard trusting anything or anyone these days. I think of the proverb, what can the righteous do if the foundations be destroyed? It looks like and feels like we are living in the era where this once exceptional country's foundations are collapsing as we speak. Make sure, therefore, you are prepared with our friends at My Patriot Supply. Get their 3-month emergency food kit. Stays good for well over 20 years with proper storage. And it contains over the 2,000 plus calories that you need for proper nutrition each day. That's breakfast, lunch, dinner, even drinks and snacks. Available to you now for $200 off each kit your family needs. Not just the whole bill, $200 off each kit that your family needs when you go to mypatriotsupply.com. Oh, they'll throw in free shipping too. Free shipping, $200 off of each kit at mypatriotsupply.com. That's mypatriotsupply.com. We go now to Theology Thursday, and we conclude for the final time our study of my 2016 book, A Nefarious Plot, leading up to the release of the film that it inspired, Nefarious, that comes out on April the 14th. And I want to mention again what I said at the top. I mean, we added 30 theaters in the Carolinas that we didn't have earlier this week because of what you guys have already done in showing the demand for this film. So thank you very much to each and every one of you. Get your tickets today. Pre-order your tickets. There are still more theaters that are on the fence right now about carrying the movie. And I mean, so many of you have emailed, hey, I'm trying to get a hold of my theater. I got my tickets, showing me your ticket stubs. Those are so cool. Thank you very much. NefariousTickets.com is where you want to go. That's NefariousTickets.com. And you'll see right away which theaters will be hosting the movie where you live when it opens on April the 14th. Here in town, I've seen 4. We're going to have 4 theaters here in Des Moines that are going to be hosting Nefarious opening weekend.
And multiple, like a pretty good bevy of showtimes, too, from what I've seen.
Yep. 2 AMC theaters, our Cinemark Theater, and then the local company, the Fridley Theater Company. And that's where we're going to do our Des Moines premiere next Wednesday that you guys are going to, our red carpet there in their XD. And man, Cinemark put us in there in the XD Theater for the red carpet in Dallas, and the experience was incredible. I mean, Nefarious on that screen and in that sound. You guys are going to a chance to sample that for
Excellent.
the red carpet premiere we're going to do in Des Moines here, the XD Theater over at the Palms here in town. So looking forward to that. But before we hand it off to the movie, we have one last furlong to run here in the race known as A Nefarious Plot, and that is with the conclusion. And when you read the conclusion, a lot of you have asked me, hey, does the book spoil the movie at all? If I haven't read the book, should I do so before I watch the movie? The book doesn't spoil the movie at all. Again, the movie is a prequel to the book. The movie will take you up to the release of the book. What's the true origin of this book, A Nefarious Plot? But if you have read the book, while the movie won't spoil it in any way, you will recognize numerous lines of dialogue and references directly from the book throughout the movie. But I'm not sure that there is anything that the movie absorbs from the book more than the conclusion. It is in the conclusion here that we're going to discuss that you learn the true motivations for why hell does what it does. They've read the book. In the end, they know they lose too, right? They know how this goes in the end. So what are we doing here? I mean, why carry on a war that for thousands of years, in advance going in, you are not going to win? Why? And the way that this is portrayed in the film is very powerful. So I won't get into specifically how this is addressed in the movie because I certainly don't want to spoil that experience for you for the first time when you watch it in a theater. But the motivation here is revealed by Nefarious in the end, in the conclusion of this book. And it's nothing more than just pure hate. Just pure hate. And one of the things that Nefarious tells you here in this conclusion is that it is no coincidence the first murder that was ever committed was Cain and Abel. Because from hell's perspective, that murder is a metaphor for how it views humanity, its relationship to humanity. That humanity is fallen, sinful, imperfect, fallible, disobedient, crude, profane, crass, stiff-necked, blaspheming, sheep. I mean, these are just all things that the Word of God calls us in many cases, and nobody loves us more than Him. We could come up with even worse terms, right? And yet, salvation for rebellion is offered to us and not offered to them. Now, we, of course, know theirs was a bit of a different kind of a rebellion than ours. And the conclusion kind of gets into that a little bit as well. Nevertheless, they're drawing a moral equivalency. We are Abel. We are the favored child. And Cain doesn't think there's justification for that and resents it. And so Cain murders his brother. And that is the metaphor that Nefarious draws upon for how hell views us. And you learn throughout the course of this book, and again in the conclusion, which is titled Judgment, that everything that Nefarious has done with this plan, gentlemen, has been to provoke the judgment of God against us. To watch us disobey God as a culture, and then watch God have to have no choice but to punish us. Otherwise, he loses his own credibility from hell's perspective. Are you a holy and just and righteous God or not? Don't you punish sin or not? Don't they deserve to be punished for all their disobedience, which, of course, hell has provoked us into in great depth. But it wasn't exactly like we were eager to say no when it came to the first step of those depths in many occasions, right? Mm-hmm. And almost every first step that hell offered us, we agreed to take it. But that is the scam. That's the monkey's paw. It doesn't reveal to us the fullness of what it will absorb us into, tempt us into. It doesn't reveal the fullness of those consequences. Who knows, if we fully understood them, maybe we wouldn't be as eager to take those first steps into those depths. But in many cases, you're not taught that. Something simple like, hey, I got my girlfriend pregnant in high school. Metaphor. I didn't actually get my girlfriend pregnant in high school, at least not that I'm aware. Maybe I'll get surprised one day. Okay. But, hey, I when we were tempted to fornicate, it was just about, won't it feel good? Won't the experience be memorable? Won't it be special? Don't you have urges, right? Mm-hmm. The full consequences of what may come of breaking through those barriers to act on those impulses. Hell doesn't say, hey, what do you feel about an unwanted pregnancy or an STD? Did they ever say that? Did those thoughts ever come into your head from the enemy when you're tempted along those lines? No. When you're having too much to drink, you know what? Does the enemy say, hey, and have a third beer and let me show you what it'll look like when you ramrod that car, when you jackknife that car on the way home and kill that kid in the backseat? No. Did they say that? No. The full consequences are never revealed. Because hell is not after truth. It's after its own agenda. They're not tempting us to make the higher point. They're tempting us to make their point. They are resentful that God punished them for their rebellion. And so their vengeance is to take whom he loves, us, and tempt us into rebellion as well. So they can maintain that they were right all along and God was wrong. There's no humility there. And without humility, you know what else you don't have? Repentance. And that brings us to a Romans 1 judgment. What's the last line of Romans 1? I'll paraphrase. When a culture is given over to its own base desires, its own depraved minds, it creates new ways to do evil while encouraging others to do the same. Hearts are hardened. Cain's heart was hardened. Hell's heart is hardened. And what we are seeing in our culture now, gentlemen, is more and more of our countrymen's hearts are getting increasingly hardened as well. That Wall Street Journal poll that we talked about last week that we spent so much time on, that was basically a quantifying of the end of Western civilization because we're its last outpost. 1/3 of Republicans said that having children was important. 1/3. Basically, Republicans now are more secular and godless than Democrats were in 1998, if you look at the trend line of that poll from the Wall Street Journal. So if Republicans are now more secular and godless in their values than Democrats were in 1998, where are Democrats now? It's just openly demonic. And that's what we're seeing play out in our headlines each day. And with that, I'll hand this off to you guys on where you want to go.
Well, speaking of hardened hearts, this process, chapter by chapter, was hardening my heart until this chapter, interestingly enough. And I don't remember my experience the other times I've read it necessarily being that way. And I think that's what you have to look forward to. One of the things you have to look forward to in the movie, how it takes you on that ride, because this book is so expressly targeted chapter after chapter after chapter of explicitly tearing down America. And this is where we live. This is our place. We feel like it's the 11th hour. We're trying to raise children in it. But then this last chapter, it's gloating, but it's telling you why it gets meta. And in the meta, it can't help but get to all of the cosmic stakes. And in all the cosmic stakes, we already have the answer. The gates of hell shall not prevail against it. It is not America. It is the light. Mm-hmm. And I found hope reading this chapter that when and if the time comes for me to shake the dust off my feet in America, and that's listen, it already happened in Carlisle, Iowa. That does not mean the light is dead. So you at the end of this book, I hope you have an opportunity to share, and I know that opportunity is there for you in the movie to embrace the light. That's my first thing. Second thing, if I may, already imposed myself on assistant executive director credits for the sequel to this movie. Because in reading this chapter needs to be the beginning, the introduction to Nefarious Carol. The movie you're about to see is, as you saw from the writers and directors talking, the challenge, it's two guys talking most of the time. But the cosmic stakes of this last chapter are ultimately what this is all about. I think the beginning of your next movie has got to be basically like the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, the first Lord of the Rings movie with Galadriel narrating the cosmic stakes, the big scenes,
the forging of the rings, and why, and what is really the context of what we're stepping into.
Because
here.
Once we get into Nefarious Carol, you're going to then again have, which will be easier in some ways to directly take to the screen because it's more natural. It actually has all of the scenes and dialogue in that mostly I think would be in there anyways. But the beginning to establish the stakes. But here's what's fascinating to me. That voiceover, instead, Galadriel's the light. That voiceover, you will bring back Sean Patrick Flannery, Nefarious.
I was actually just thinking that. It'd be pretty cool.
He's the voice. Yes. Setting the tone, what he was setting up, and then handing it off to his master.
That would be a great open. Because you have these massive stakes and you hear Nefarious's voice. Here is what is at play.
Yes.
And then we go to this similar kind of an inverse because, hell loves to demonically invert what God has done, right? And so it's in this humble stable that Messiah comes, the forgiveness of our sins. He will save the people from their sins. And most of the world is completely unaware that this cosmic transaction is taking place in a barn in the middle of nowhere in Palestine, right?
Exactly.
Along those lines, Nefarious sets these incredible stakes to open the movie as a preamble, and then we go to this seedy motel room where this young woman is lost and has nowhere to go, and it is here now that really a reverse trial for the future of humanity takes place. That's
just saying.
That's freaking good, dude.
Just saying.
That's actually really good.
Well, it is that chapter, but you talked about the hate. Out of the gate, setting with the disdain, and I mean, really, hey, Sean, got an idea. I'm in. He already said, I can
tell you.
Let's do this.
I talked at length with Sean Patrick Flannery, who plays Nefarious. I mean, I talked at length with him at our after party, and he was the last person I got a chance to talk to before I had to go. And him and I spoke at length. I think he would be willing to come back and do just about anything in this franchise. He so believes in this movie and is so impressed with what Carrie and Chuck and their final product looks like, and is so eager to see its impact on people. I think he's game for sure.
Oh, it's going to be like asking James Earl Jones, does he want to voice Darth Vader again?
Well,
yeah.
I don't know if it's quite like that, but I'm flattered that you're even putting it somewhere within the geosynchronous orbit of that magnitude. Thank you.
He's going to up the ante on Jordan. He says, "Yeah, my wife's pregnant with 10 babies right now, but I'm going to do this movie." That's how it's going to
go. I don't know. Aaron, do you want to talk? Do you want us to bypass you? I want to be.
Can you pass over me? It is coming upon Passover. That would be great.
All right, so we will pass over you. Okay.
Let's chat.
All right.
Thank you.
Let us chat. Because I know I didn't want to, I should have asked you before we came back from the break, but dude is over there fighting through. So I don't want to make it look like we don't want your opinion or don't care, but if you want us to spare you, we are happy to do that as well.
I think the audience would like me to spare them.
The audience would like that. Yes. All right. So one of the things that let me take it back to this step, actually. Forgive me. Over the years, I've said on this show several times, the other side doesn't have some secret knowledge we don't know. There isn't some stream of information you're unaware of, okay? And so therefore, I don't know, it just kind of seems silly to me. Like, for example, how do you have free college? Everybody there is working. All the faculty's getting paid, right? All the janitorial staff's getting paid. The support staff's getting paid. College is free. Money's coming from somewhere, right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Okay. And you may feel like okay, free college. Help me understand how college is free, yet everybody that is providing the services therein are getting compensated. Someone's paying for it. I mean, it might be free to you, but someone is paying for it, right?
Yes.
Right? Okay. And you might be in a setting where you're like, should I ask that? Nah, there's got to be something I'm missing. Can't be that simple. Like this, this entire argument cannot be this much of a fallacy. That just a community college grad who once failed the quick trip managerial exam could do over 50 appearances on MSNBC and CNN and NPR and just crush all these people by just bringing up simple points like that. Well, here's what I learned as a community college grad who once failed the quick trip managerial exam, okay? After doing all those appearances on MSNBC, CNN, and PBS. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. And that's why when you make point of order, I remember one time I did a panel during the 2012 election. And you guys know how much I just could not, I still to this day, I can't stand Mitt Romney. Everything about him is a fraud on a political scale. I'm sure personally he's got a wonderful singing voice and his family seems to love him, but politically, everything about the guy is one of the biggest frauds that's ever been, maybe the biggest fraud that has ever been presented to the right is on a political level only is Mitt Romney.
That's a high bar or a low bar.
Yeah, depending on how you look at it. Yes. Okay. And so imagine how whacked out this panel had to be to put me in a position to defend Mitt Romney once on MSNBC. That gives you an idea of, I'm like, guys, I'll show you what to really criticize him on. No, they demanded to criticize him on the craziest, stupidest, because they were never good at hell. It was about their agenda, not the truth. They were never, even if the truth was on the, wow. Remember this. Even if and when the truth is on their side, they would still rather argue their agenda. Let that just waffle in the air for a little bit. Just breathe that in. Did we not see that in the Trump era? There were times he stepped on rakes all the time. They could have just parked it right there on the rake that he stepped on. No, they had to go with, and he's a Nazi that did a P-tape for Putin. You see what I'm saying? I mean,
because their agenda is hating us. It's not the truth. Just like Nefarious.
Just like Nefarious.
That's what I said
just like hell.
About the whole...
Yes.
Why this case with Donald Trump?
Mm-hmm.
Because of their long memory. And they want to do to Trump what they think Republicans did to Bill Clinton. Even if this is everybody's, like Slate is out there saying, this is pretty a bad legal case, then why bring it forward? Hate.
Yes. And so that's why even if and when the truth of a situation is on their side, they would still rather present and argue their own agenda instead of that truth. And so one day we were discussing that Mitt Romney doesn't know anything about creating jobs. Now, Mitt Romney knows quite a bit about laying people off and taking their jobs away from his time at Bain Capital. Okay. Nevertheless, I also worked for Bain Capital for a few years at WHO Radio and provided me a job.
Mm-hmm.
I got a paycheck. My health insurance was covered. You know what I'm saying? So kind of think he knows at least a little bit about, what it takes to create jobs. And so at the end, I just asked this panel on MSNBC live on national television once. I asked them, hey, if y'all think taxing rich people is the way to create jobs, cool. Everybody here, raise your hand if you ever got a job from a poor person. How many hands do you think went up?
Zero.
In fact, they all looked at each other like, we have chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry. Okay. I mean, just silence. All right. I said, yeah, me too. I mean, all my jobs came from rich people. So I don't, forgive me. I don't understand how we create jobs by taxing the very people that have the propensity and the capacity to offer them to people. Doesn't make much sense to me, but YOLO. Okay. All right. There isn't. They're not holding out anything. And that's why. And so you might be thinking in a situation, I don't know, should I ask that question? Should I bring this up? I mean, does Aunt Petunia, does she know something I don't know? No. That's why when you do bring it up, they just look at you and say, why are you a racist? Why do you want old people to die? I was asking, I mean, does this loose fitting cloth mask, okay, that I can feel every ounce of cold or hot air, depending on the temperature outside, come through as I'm wearing it. Okay. So clearly it's not keeping some air particles out. Are we sure these things actually stop us from passing on our germs via a respiratory virus to other people? You hate the elderly. No, I just was curious. I mean, no. You have no reason not to speak up. There is no formula. There's nothing you don't know if you have some common sense and you are informed to some degree. Now, you might be an idiot. You might be a moron. And if that's the case, don't speak up. Okay? Most of you, I'm guessing, within the sound of my voice, though, are not. All right? I can promise you, as someone who's been in more of these settings and live on television than most of you have been, there's nothing you don't know. You're not stepping on a rake. You're not walking into a howitzer. You're not walking into an ambush. That's why their response is, you're a homophobe. I mean, I don't know. Don't you think if we had to give kids a mom and a dad every opportunity we have? You're a homophobe, and you want trans people to die. Well, I just was asking. Do you think it's a good idea to castrate 11-year-olds? You just want trans violence. They're not like bypassing all the brilliant talking points they have to get to the demagoguery. There are no brilliant talking points. There's just demagoguery. Which brings us to this final chapter. That's all hell has. They don't have a secret knowledge, a secret plan. Their plan is to use our own infallibility against us. That's the plan. That's the plan. And just punitively produce the highest body count we have. And in the hopes maybe one day, God looks at the carnage as he did at the flood when he regretted for that moment ever creating humans. Can they create a level of carnage so high that God would regret creating us again, and then maybe this time welcome them back and restore them? And just in case the answer to that ends up being no, then if they're going down, they're taking as many of us with them as they possibly can. That's it. Just because. There is a scene in Nefarious that depicts this perfectly. I won't do anything to spoil it. There is one singular scene in Nefarious that depicts the level of spite here, the level of hatred they have for us. There's a reason why everything they tempt us to, dangerous forms of sexuality, dangerous sexual practices, drug abuse, alcoholism, family dysfunction, family betrayal, marriage betrayal, corrupt business practices, corrupt political practices. There's a reason why everything they tempt us to is bad. All right? It's because all they want to happen to us is bad things. And maybe if they get us to do enough bad things, they get to watch the show of another cataclysmic event like the flood. Maybe then God will say, you were right. I should have never made these flesh bots. My bad. Come on home. If not, the spite is so real, they're just going to be happy taking as many of us down to the pit with them as they possibly can. There is no other agenda other than that.
Oren McIntyre yesterday did a great short little Twitter thread that basically is about this. And he had the picture of Heath Ledger's Joker. That's all part of the plan. And he said, you all believe right now that even when people are doing really dumb or seemingly evil things, that there's a plan. These people are smart. The rubber band bounces back. It has to end somewhere. And they just count on this plan existing where everything ultimately makes sense in the end. And he says, no, it's not that. It's not that at all. He says you just simply can't accept the fact that they've given themselves to chaos, to evil. Up is down. That's really what it is. But you can't accept that. Well, it's Easter almost. And the one thing you need to accept, to Steve's point, is that at the beginning of our entering people into the church, the first thing we say, do you reject Satan and all his evil processes? Forget about anybody's degrees or anything else. Steve's right. They don't have a better plan. They're worshiping the Dark One. If you don't, you got a shot in this game.
Amen. Man, Constitution Wealth has already helped align $10 million of wealth within our listing base with our base's values. That's just in the first 6 weeks of being a partner on the show. That's incredible. But we still have a lot of work to do. Back of the napkin calculation shows we've got roughly $10 billion of investable patriotic money in our audience each week. Is that a lot of money?
Yeah.
That's a bit. That's a lot. Also makes me think maybe I should be getting paid more. But that's a topic for another day. Anyway. That's 100,000 list time. That's 100,000 listeners times $100,000 per household. All right, so I'm guessing that is actually fairly conservative. If you're only talking about 100,000 listeners. So, folks, here is why you want to get aligned with our friends over at Constitution Wealth, because we're in a culture war of biblical proportions at this point. And one of the key assets and weapons at your disposal is your wealth. You can now align your prosperity with your principles. They don't have to be at odds any longer. They'll help you learn how to do so. Just go to constitutionwealth.com/Steve. Book an appointment today to get your retirement investments aligned with your values. All right, constitutionwealth.com/Steve is where you want to go. That's constitutionwealth.com/Steve. It is now time for 3 non-political questions.
We all have questions.
Who am I? Why am I here? Where am I going? Who am I? A search and a question of identity. Why am I here? A question of meaning and purpose. Where am I going? Question of destiny.
Some better than others.
What sort of morality or proto-morality would you expect to find in a chimpanzee troop?
Injecting some levity into the demise of Western civilization. It's 3 Questions on the Steve Deace Show.
And there she is, my oldest.
Hi, Dad.
Hey, good timing for Aaron to hand this off to you because he's probably too sick to do it today anyway.
Are you sick, Aaron? I didn't know that.
Yes, he is.
A wee bit, yeah.
Yeah, this is what you, whatever day you and Steven get the joy and honor of becoming parents. This is what happens when you have little kids. You guys are just too adorable. You know, you're soaking up every germ in the atmosphere. You're just too adorable. We have to pick you up and love on you the whole time, and then you pass all those germs on to us, and we're constantly sick. That's just part of the routine. But you wouldn't trade it for anything in the world, so here we are. So you get to talk now.
Okay.
You guys ready? Did you bring good ones?
I hope so. I mean, I did them this morning, so I guess I'm not. I was still.
Well, Aaron would often do them during the commercial break leading into this segment.
But I did do them this morning.
Okay.
So I'm also feel like I'm still like half asleep from our trip and everything. So hopefully, they're good.
Did you enjoy going to your first red carpet movie premiere? Was that fun?
It was a lot of fun. I met a lot of cool people, especially from like the Blaze and everything. So
I see that Alex Stein went up and talked to you at our red carpet premiere and said not a word to me. I thought that was interesting.
I asked Sarah Gonzalez. I pulled her aside and I was like, "Can you introduce me to Alex Stein?" Because I needed to know if he was like that in person or not.
Yes.
Because you see those videos. Like I was telling someone out there, I feel like he's a figment of my imagination sometimes. Because I see those videos he does, and I'm like, nobody's like this. And then I met him, and he was exactly like that. And he said 90% of his viewership is men. So he said it was nice to meet a woman who likes his videos. So, and then he gave me a follow, so that was nice.
That was nice. Yeah. I mean, I've spoken to him when he's been a lot quieter. Yes.
Yeah.
But the issues we are covering and the values that we are going up against make us like this.
He had high praise for your movie. I forgot to tell you that, actually. Yeah. He said usually Christian movies, he was like, I came in here expecting cheese, and he said it was really good. He really liked it a lot.
Good.
And he seems like the type of person that would have been honest.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. There would have been a video out the next morning.
Yeah, drink in hand. So I assumed now he's really being honest. I'd
have come in here this morning, first day back, and Stein would have been here with a camera. We're here confronting Deace on his cheesy movie. Yes, I'm positive that would have been the case. All right, are you ready to go?
Yes.
All right, here we go. Okay.
Okay, so I think I wrote this down, but now I'm changing it right here. So I'm curious to think. So before I had, if you could have anyone on the show non-political, who would it be? But now I want to know if you could have a one-on-one private conversation with anyone non-political, who would it be? Because I feel like that's a little different, and I'm curious.
You want to take this first?
I love it when you do that. That's private one-on-one conversation. Well, I kind of alluded to my wanting it badly just a couple of days ago, but with Sean Patrick Flannery. Because having seen the movie, I wanted and needed, and everybody else who hasn't seen the movie, and once they see them, they'll understand that I need so much more out of a conversation with like what he found, how he channeled that, if it did anything to him. Because he was dancing with the devil by the pale moonlight, and I can't. Aaron was right. The box set for this kind of thing, it's going to be epic.
My struggle with answering this question is, at this stage of America's devolution, what is not political? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I mean, everything's been politicized. You know what I mean? And frankly, all the reasons I'd want to talk to some people is because of that. Like, I would love to have a conversation with Roger Goodell. Just no holds barred, commissioner of the NFL. Just sit down. Yeah, I mean, what's up? I mean, what are we doing here? You know what I mean? But the reason why I would want to have that conversation is because he's become a platform for politicizing the NFL. I mean, where could we? I mean, one of the reasons you want to know how much the movie impacted Sean Patrick Flannery is because of the socio-political, cultural impact that you think the film has. I mean, I could say the Pope, even as a Protestant, but the reality is, the reason I would is because I watch him about 30% of the time. He's a Catholic. The other 70%, and that's being kind. And the other 70% of the time, he's like a woke prophet of the age, or at least in the stuff that allegedly comes from his social media and office. Okay, so my struggle is coming up with someone compelling I'd want to talk to. Like I could come up with lots of big name ministers I'd love to sit down and talk to. But it would all be under the auspices of, do you know what time it is? You know what I'm saying? I mean, where would I go for just an interesting conversation that would be devoid of getting into any of this at all? And I don't know who that would be. I don't. Okay. I'll pick Jim Harbaugh. Just because I want to know if he's that weird in person. Okay.
He's that weird.
All right. It's like that's one I could think of. Like I was going to say Juwan Howard, but then I couldn't stop myself from saying, hey, do you think we could take, how many more frauds have to be exposed against Black Lives Matters before we stop being the last college basketball team in the country still brandishing their damn, badges. I couldn't stop myself from asking that question. You know what I mean? So at least maybe with Jim Harbaugh, I could just, talk football. Okay. But even Jim Harbaugh is like, doing men's ministry events and speaking at pro-life banquets now. So I just don't know where to go that this isn't seeping into every vestige of our society these days anymore.
All true.
I would just say my son, just for all those reasons, he doesn't know about any of this stuff yet. And he's like one of the few people that I know that has no idea what the world is yet. So there's that. That's a non-political conversation.
That is. And, if I did one thing right as a dad, it was protecting my own children from this for as long as I possibly could, so they could actually just be kids for as long as I allowed, or as long as the system allowed me to.
So next, if you had to live one day over and over again, what day would you pick?
One day over and over again, what day would I pick?
My birth, maybe, or I kind of was writing that question. I was like, I hope that's what he says. The days part of me was like,
I did a good job shielding my kids from the world when they were little. Clearly did not teach them humility. We needed to work on that. I fell short where that's concerned. You know what, man? I think I am going to choose, if I had to pick one day, I might actually choose just this last Tuesday. I mean, I still did my show, so I still got to do what God has called me to do. I still got to, be on mission, but I got to share one of maybe my greatest professional accomplishment and one of the coolest moments of my life with everybody, with all of you guys. And so my wife got to share in it. My children got to share in it. And that's a day that I can pick that won't alienate any of you, because you guys were all there. You were all there. So I'm gonna pick that one, I think. Yes. Todd, what about you?
Well, I think it might be the day I drove home from my first date with my wife. I met her at a wedding, but she lived in Iowa and I lived in Wisconsin at the time. And so then I think it was 3 weeks of phone conversations and stuff like that, and her trying to find ways of saying, this is not going to work, but in me being insufferable and saying, we're going to at least make this first date work. So 3 weeks later, going and knowing, driving home, you have Holy Spirit moments in your life. There was my life before that trip, and there was my life after. And I had a sense of certainty and God's will in my life and his goodness as much as I've ever had before.
Amen. That's good. Yeah.
Well, I don't think I've ever actually revealed this on air. I think you may recall, Steve and Todd, but in the very early, before even 15 days to slow the spread was officially a thing, you remember things were already shutting down. Airline prices were ridiculously cheap. Hotel fares were ridiculously cheap. So one weekend for maybe 2 or 3 days, Bella and I, just on a whim, this was at the very beginning of the pandemic, the plandemic. We got on a plane and we went to Florida, and we spent a few days in Florida.
I remember that, yeah.
And it was prior to Ben, and I love Ben, obviously, but it was just Bella and I, and we basically had the run of Orlando and Central Florida. We just hung out. I mean, the interstates were empty. We just kind of did whatever we wanted to. Went on the lazy river at the Hilton, where we had a really good rate. It was just a lot of fun. So any of those days I would do over and over again. And this is, we've been to Orlando twice since then and been to Universal twice since then, but that, in my mind, just having that adventure was a lot of fun.
That's a good one too.
That is a good one. This one I'm the most curious about.
Okay.
So if you three were in the Hunger Games, which one of you do you think would win? And let's put in why. Which
Todd.
one? So you would pick which one would win.
Why do you think it's Todd?
Same reason why if Daniel was here, I'd pick Daniel. He'll cut you.
The level of spite?
I think Todd, if it came down to it, I mean, he's shown it in his own school board. He has no fear whatsoever. So, and you don't either, Steve, but I just feel like Todd, I think it would be tempting to overlook him, and that's why he would probably have the advantage.
That's a good reason, because I think we have a lot of similar characteristics, but I do think you'd be more tempted to overlook him. Probably because I couldn't keep my mouth shut at the beginning. So you'd see me coming. All right. But that's actually why I think I'm going to pick Aaron. Because I think you would absolutely overlook him. And then he brings enough of our ruthlessness, but with some certain life survival skills that maybe we don't have. That would come in handy. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe he's not quite as cunning and ruthless, but he's got enough of that. But he more than compensates for it with the survival skills.
Like how
standpoint.
PETA in the movie painted himself to look like a tree.
Yeah.
And was just chilling there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I kind of think if I were in the Hunger Games, it would be feast or famine. Like I would pick the right person or persons to manipulate. I'm sorry. Join with. I'd either pick the right ones to join with, or the wrong ones, and then then you're dead. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'd either
they did in the movie, how the District 1 people all grouped together, and then they
I think I'd either get all the way to the end, or I'm dead day 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Because I just misread the room. Okay.
Yeah.
Or I read it perfectly, and I'm in the final group.
See,
okay?
honestly, I feel like you would be so honest, and because they all do interviews at the beginning.
Yes.
I feel like that would go so poorly, and then no one would gift you things. That it just wouldn't go well. Would be my worry.
That's good. That's very good. Todd, what do you think?
I think we're reading this the wrong way. It doesn't really matter. The point is, all the three of us are in the game. So it doesn't matter who else we'd kill. It would be this hinges on our ability to kill each other. So that's the dark path we need to go down.
Wow, that
isn't that the game?
Or you guys can do what they did and all eat the berries and be like, we're gonna get married if we eat the berries. They'd love that, wouldn't they?
I guess I was assuming that we were in it separately and not all in it together. But maybe I had the wrong answer. If Todd is already jumping to, we're gonna have to kill each other. Maybe you're right. Isn't that
the game?
Yeah, it's all of you. If all of you were in the Hunger Games
together. If all of us
together.
were in it together, okay.
So one of you would feign would feign a little bit of, I don't know. You would try to form an alliance with me. Here's some gluten-free bread, but there's a catch. It's not gluten-free.
I think I'm going to stick with my same answer, though. Because if I successfully chose the right people to get with, I'll have them take you guys out for me. I don't have, so I don't have to get that on my hands. You know what I'm saying?
That's nice.
And then,
That's nice.
And then if I took the wrong group, you guys wouldn't have to get rid of me because I'd already be dead before we even got to that point.
Yeah.
Because I rode the wrong horse. Yeah.
Wash your hands.
Exactly. So I think I'm going to still stick with Aaron because he still brings those survival skills to the table with some element of ruthlessness.
I made it dark, but ultimately to make it light. I think ultimately Aaron would win, but because Steve and I have lived enough life, I think we would fall on our sword and let Aaron live on and have a family because we've already done that.
Yeah, Dad?
Okay.
Yeah.
We're the good guys. See what I did? Jesus juke. I win.
Are we the baddies?
I'm good with this.
John 3:17.